Hey, what's up everybody? This is Soberg501 and today I want to go over the top 5 best systems in Diablo 4. Now all of these systems or gameplay features I'm going over in this video are either just going to be systems that I think are really good, or they're going to be systems that have been re-implemented into the Diablo franchise, or systems that have gotten massive upgrades from Diablo 3. Now at number 5 we have Fields of Hatred, which is the PvP system for the launch of Diablo 4. Now, Fields of Hatred are going to be in specific areas. They're going to be in the open world, and when entering these areas, you'll get a warning that you're now in a PvP zone. Any other players that aren't grouped with you can now fight you, and there are going to be a specific currency for this zone called Seeds of Hatred. So for doing anything in this area, killing players, looting chests, killing monsters, you'll get these Seeds of Hatred, but these Seeds of Hatred can be dropped once you're killed by other players. So you're going to want to take these Seeds of Hatred to an altar of extraction, where it'll turn these Seeds of Hatred into another currency called Red Dust, and then you can use Red Dust at PvP vendors to buy gear and buy PvP specific cosmetics. But when you're turning these Seeds of Hatred into Red Dust at this altar, all the other players in the area will know this is happening. So you're going to attract other players that want to kill you, take your seeds before you're able to turn them into this permanent currency. And this is going to be the PvP system for Diablo 4 on launch. And PvP specifically in the ARPG genre, or even more specifically in the Diablo-like games, usually isn't a focus or even implemented in the vast majority of the other ARPGs. So having a decently substantial PvP system on the launch of the game, I think is going to be a pretty big boon for Diablo 4, because like I mentioned, most other games that are similar to Diablo don't even have PvP implemented at all, or if they do, it's hardly ever used. And I think this is a spot that Diablo 4 could really shine in, is continuing to implement other PvP systems and having Fields of Hatred just be the start of that side of the game. They could add in arenas and battlegrounds and tons of other stuff down the road in future seasons and expansions. And at number 4, we have the open world of Diablo 4. And I know a lot of other genres have been doing open world games for a couple decades at this point, but ARPGs and Diablo-like games specifically are almost unanimously not open world games. Most of them are a zone or a level, then you have to go through a loading screen to get to a next level, or it's a handful of tight corridors stitched together, but almost none of them have fully open worlds that if you want to, you could walk from one side to the other. And as a fan of open world games in general, I think this is a very good way to advance the Diablo franchise, going from the way we just went over, where it's a level or a zone, then it's a loading screen to get to a new zone. Going from that to fully open world, I think is a good way to more modernize the franchise. And it's not just the fact of the game being an open world, but there's going to be a ton of exploration, specifically because they turned it into an open world game. There's going to be the renown system that is essentially zone completion that wants you to go do every piece of that specific area or region. You have altars of Lilith, where there's dozens of these in every single region that give you permanent account-wide stats. Then there's even going to be things like world bosses, where you show up to this massive boss that pulls your camera back, and there can be a dozen other players here helping you fight this massive boss. And then just the fact that you can randomly see players out in the open world, even though that will be a rare occurrence, that's still something that can happen. You can be out doing a quest and see another player going by doing another quest. And I think that just generally adds to kind of the feeling of this being an actual world you're playing in. And at number 3, we have unique class mechanics. Now, if you don't know what these are, in Diablo 4, every single class is going to have their own unique system that is specific to that class, that is going to heavily modify how you create builds for that class. So for instance, barbarians have the arsenal system. Now this at a baseline allows them to equip and use 4 different weapons at the same time, which also means you're going to be getting all the stats and affixes from all of those weapons weapons as well. But tied into the system, the barbarians are actually going to be able to specifically level up every different type of weapon and get different stats or effects just from leveling these weapons up. And then most of the barbarian skills are also going to require a specific type of weapon. And then when you're using the correct weapons, when you go to use that ability, your barbarian's automatically going to pull out that weapon and use that weapon for that skill. And everything we just went over is only specific to the barbarian. If you went to the necromancer, they have the Book of the Dead, which is their unique system that heavily ties into choosing between being a summoner build or a more dark caster build, where they can choose and customize the different summons they want, giving them different upgrades, and even choosing the base versions of those summons. So your base versions of summons could either be reapers or warriors, and then tied into that system, you could also sacrifice your summons for permanent buffs if you want to be a more dark caster necromancer. And every single class in Diablo 4 has a different unique system tied specifically to that class. Now, looking at an overview of the entirety of the game and just creating different builds in the game, this is going to add quite a lot of uniqueness to the different classes past what you would normally get with having a class-based game of having different skills and stats doing different things. Now, this just adds another layer on top of that, and I think this is an area that could keep Diablo 4 fresh for thousands of hours, especially for people who want to play all of the different classes. Then at number 2, we have skill trees, and this is going to be directly comparing what's coming in Diablo 4 to what came before it, in more specifically Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. Because in Diablo 4, you are going to have these massive sprawling skill trees where you put a point into a center node, and that will unlock all of the skills or abilities of that category. Then you can put skill points into those abilities themselves, and you can put up to 5 to increase the power and effects of those skills. Then once you learn those skills, you can choose a handful of upgrades that come off of that skill, and those upgrades are going to be specific to that skill, augmenting or upgrading that skill in additional ways. Then there are also going to be some other passive sections of the skill tree that can just give you more general upgrades. But comparing this to Diablo 2 and Diablo 3, Diablo 2 had skill trees. It was much more of an old school RPG in that way, but then going from Diablo 2 to Diablo 3, they removed skill trees, and Diablo 3 had a lot less character customization and build creation than in Diablo 2. But then we go up to Diablo 4, and it's definitely more of a return to form for the franchise, and even an upgrade or expansion of it, because the Diablo 4's skill trees are going to be much bigger with a lot more options in this one system. And these are class-specific skill trees, so every single skill tree is going to be different for every single class. They're going to have different passive upgrades. Obviously, this is where they're going to house all of that class's different abilities or skills, which, tying on to all of the other progression in the game, is just going to give you a ton of different builds and possibilities when creating your playstyle or specific build. Then finally, for number 1, we have Paragon Boards, and this again is going to be directly compared to what came before it in Diablo 3. So in Diablo 4, at the end game, you're going to unlock a system called Paragon Boards, and you're going to need level 50 to unlock this, which is halfway to max level. Max level is 100, and level 50 is also going to be right around the same time you're completing the main campaign or main quests of the game. And Paragon Boards are going to be these big checker boards of effects and stats that you get to unlock points for as you level up past 50 to put points into these different sections and make your way throughout the board. Then when you hit the gate or the edge of this board, so either of the 4 sides, you then unlock being able to slot in another Paragon board. And with this new Paragon board, you can slot in starting at any direction you want. So if it's another square or rectangle, you get to turn it and start on whichever side of the new Paragon board you want. And all the different Paragon boards you have are unique and developer created. There's nothing random here, and they're all class specific as well. And one of the best parts of this system when comparing it to the Paragon system of Diablo 3 is that this has a limited amount amount of Paragon points you can put into it. So going from 50 to 100, you're going to be getting 4 Paragon points for every one of your character's level. So you level up 25% of a level on your character, that gives you another Paragon point. This means you're going to have right around 200 Paragon points to spend. Now there are going to be some Paragon points from some other account-wide progression systems, but those are also going to be capped as well. So you're going to have a limit to how many points you get to spend in the system. Compare that to Diablo 3's Paragon system. Diablo 3's system was infinite. You could infinitely farm and infinitely get more stats for your character, and comparing the two systems as a whole, the Diablo 3 system, you just had a bunch of different sections of stat increases you could put your Paragon points into, and that's it. There wasn't any special effects or other ways to progress throughout the board or anything like that. It was just stat increases. Now the Paragon system in Diablo 4 actually has a lot of other things tied into it. So every point you're using on Paragon boards, you're choosing between a handful of different tiles. Now all tiles on these boards are either common, magic, rare, or legendary. Common being just base stat increases, magic being more defensive stat increases, rares having more utility, usually more based upon your class, and then also having some additional effects tied to them. For instance, rare tiles can also have stat requirements to get secondary effects. So one tile may require you to have 175 strength and 125 willpower to get an additional 8% increased max fury for a barbarian. Then finally you have legendary tiles, which every board besides the first board will have one legendary tile in the middle that will give you some massive buff or effect for your specific class. But that's not all for Paragon boards, and this is one of the reasons why this is pretty much my favorite system that I've seen for Diablo 4, because it just provides so many options. But tied on to the entirety of the Paragon board are also going to be these things called glyphs and sockets. So on Paragon boards, some of the tiles are going to be empty sockets, and once you go to those sockets, you can slot in these things called glyphs to give additional effects and to also boost up every tile around that socket with additional effects or more stats. And glyphs are going to be obtained from just doing different activities out in the world. This is going to be another item that you're able to loot and use in your Paragon board. And we don't know exactly how you're going to get those, but probably from endgame dungeons or other endgame activities. And slotting in this glyph will give an aura around that socket that either buffs up all the other tiles you have in that area. So maybe if you have a bunch of strength tiles around this socket and you put a glyph in, now maybe all those strength tiles now give 30% more strength. But then once you get later into this system, you can even get additional effects or stats based upon everything in that radius. So now you have a type of gearing system tied into Paragon boards, which is just going to even add more customization to your specific build and what stats you're going for. And I just scratched the surface of all the information for all of these different systems we went over in this video, but these are my top 5 favorite systems for Diablo 4, and I think these are either just really good implementations or really interesting or fun systems, or they're just massive upgrades from what came before them in Diablo 2, or more specifically from coming from Diablo 3. But that's all I want to go over, so subscribe if you want to see more Diablo 4 or other videos, leave a like if you liked the video, leave a comment down below what you guys think about these 5 different systems, and thanks for watching.